Hello, welcome back to another Swans Cast match preview ahead of Swansea's trip to Sunderland. I'm joined by Graham from the Falk Podcast again. So welcome back, Graham. Been here a few times now.
Yeah, mate, it's beginning to come a bit of a second home in it, even though I've never been to Wales.
Yeah, I mean, as much as it would be great for you guys to have success at the end of the season. You're in a good position to do so. It'd be sad if we do miss you, at least for a year. But we'll talk a little bit more about whether you think that's going to come to fruition maybe in a bit later on. But the chances are definitely there for you guys. Before we get into any of that, then, can you just remind everyone where they can find your content? Obviously, we just recorded a bit of a similar video the other way around. So where can we find all of that stuff if we want to go check it out?
Yeah, I've tried to get off X, but I kind of think, unfortunately, the James Bond villain has a grip on everyone's social media at the moment. So we're still there. It's at What the Falk Pod. In terms of where you can listen to the podcast, just the normal places like YouTube is one place, but we don't do it in video. We just do audio, Spotify, but everywhere does podcasts. It's just men aging towards, or kind of anchoring towards 40, just do podcasts. So there's loads more podcast streaming platforms where you can probably find us. But if you want to listen, you can.
Yeah, we're still on X as well, but I'm waiting for a tariff to be introduced or something. And then
yeah. If he understands how it works, let's be honest.
Does he even understand?
I don't know, mate.
God knows.
Think so.
Anyway, let's not get too political, I guess. But let's talk about the football instead. Maybe we'll talk about football politics. But Sunderland season then has been, I think, pretty good, to be honest. I think Swansea fans can probably look at that and be like, why can't that be us? But sitting in fourth place, I know when we spoke just now, you kind of said stuck in fourth place. So on 75 points, I think you're quite comfortable. You got 15 over the team behind. But as much as if Leeds continue the way they're going, maybe third's achievable, but a little bit of a gap there. 8 points to Leeds, isn't it, in third? So how would you sort of rate your season so far? And is it what you expected, or have you perhaps overachieved? Like where do you think you're going to be compared to where you've actually ended up?
It's been a really strange season because we started the period between August to October was just amazing. At one point, I think we were 5 points clear at the top of the league, and you're going, hang on a minute, we're actually in the conversation for automatics here. But if I take us back to the start of the season, the frustration in the summer was the fact that we'd basically gone from being a playoff team under Tony Mowbray. We dropped off a bit under Tony Mowbray. It was more the appointment that came after him that made us so bad. But we were sort of between fifth to sort of ninth for a long time the season before being in the playoffs, and I felt like we had a good enough team. I think any team that had Jack Clark last season probably could have been good enough to be in the playoffs, because how many people have a winger that can score the best part of 20 goals? Not many at the time, but it just didn't go too grand. And then we had this 100 days without a manager. So it got to a point when we got the manager, and it was around the Euros, the group stages, we got him, I think. Reggie Slibreeze came in, and whilst it was a name that not many of us had heard of, and then realised he came off a relegation at Lorient, we were sort of like, oh, but at the same time, it was more relief that we knew who was going to be kind of leading the ship going into the next season. And then I think maybe some of the frustration from last season is we knew how good of a team we could be. I don't think we expected to be as good as we have been this season. But then we were so good at the start. You sort of get into January. Now we beat Sheffield United comfortably, in my opinion, on New Year's Day. We should have probably beaten them away from home as well. And I think Sheffield United will probably go on to win the league, if I'm honest with you, because they're just the most consistent. But when you see your team beating teams like Sheffield United, we beat Burnley earlier in the season. We should have beaten them away from home, but we missed 2 penalties. Leeds, okay, were probably the team that looked better than us, but they seem to have this period of April to May where they just can't win games and just love to pretend they're going to fall apart. So it's a bit frustrating that we couldn't kick further on. But look, you touched on it a little bit on the podcast that we had previously, from the opposite perspective when it comes to looking at Sunderland. We're a really young team, and I think whilst we've fixed a lot of things in terms of last season, we were really young. I don't think we had many players. I think maybe 2 players over the age of 27, 28. This season, we've got Chris Mepham, Wales international, as I'm sure you'll know. We've got Luke O'Nien, who's now 30. Simon Moore isn't a regular goalkeeper. He doesn't start regularly. He's only played a couple of times, but he's 34 years old. He's in the dressing room. We've got a few more players the age of 24 rather than 19. And we've still got those 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old players that are within the squad, but with a bit more experience. But we're still a young squad. And I think if you combine that with parachute payments that we don't have, that the other three brothers do, it's probably natural that we fell out of the automatic conversation. But the fact that we're, 15 points clear, I think, at the time of speaking, before the game against Norwich on Tuesday, over 5th. I mean, Jesus, that's fantastic. But the worrying thing is, and probably the big thing is, you want to have a good season, but you get no prizes for finishing 4th. If we end up kind of running out of steam in the playoffs and we get beat off, God forbid, dare I say, Coventry or Middlesbrough, it feels like an awful season. But like trying to put on my adult head and trying to put on my not reactionary head and not my Sunderland are going to do a Sunderland head, it's been a really good season. And ultimately, I think I touched on it a little bit before with the podcast previously, and you asked how I felt the season had gone in November. None of us are on the planet for that long. Don't mean to get too philosophical here. We just want to kind of spend our money on a team that we enjoy seeing, that we think cares, and that like we like to watch. And I've done that. Like this season's been, in my 35-ish years of supporting Sunderland, up there with one of my favourites, and that's because I trust the players on the field. I know they're not perfect. I know they're not infallible, but I think they care. And it's nice to have that because it hasn't always been like that with Sunderland. Like Jack Rodwell exists. So it's been a toiling decade to be a Sunderland fan with the League One days, and this has not been anywhere near as toiling as possible. But I also understand football fandom is a reactionary weekly thing that I'm also involved in. And when you get beat, and if we don't win the playoffs, or we don't, somehow sneak into a max at the end, you're going to feel disappointment. It's just natural.
Yeah, we got that twice with Cooper and didn't quite get over the line. It's frustrating, isn't it, when you can't quite do it. I think we were beaten by Brentford in both of them. To be fair, they obviously went up the second time, and maybe it's a easier pill to swallow, and they're still up there. Mm-hmm. But they were a good team at the time. I think they were the emerging team when they were doing things the right way and building over a long period and got there. But I couldn't really call. I think the bookies would have whoever finishes third out of the current top 3 as the favourite. But anything can happen in the playoffs. It's just a final, isn't it? It's a cup final at the end of the day. So if you get to that final, who knows? Leeds are having a bit of a torrid time. But the teams below the playoffs as well, I feel like no one's really taking it by the scruff of the neck to try and get in. Coventry, I thought, would go into, but they've kind of fallen off as well. Everyone else seems to be trying to throw it away, to be honest. Like West Brom, Blackburn, for a couple of weeks now, they've just disappeared. Yeah, weird league, to be honest, this season. That's what I was saying to you, wasn't it, in the last video? Like, if we didn't have that torrid 9-game spell, we're only 12 points off there now, which is obviously quite a lot. But if you win 2 or 3 games in that 9-game spell, that you're literally right in that hunt all of a sudden, and that's probably in line with the points per game before and after that we've had this season. So disappointing that happened for us, but yeah, we're not there, so we're not going to talk about that. Anyway, talking back about Sunderland, we obviously talked about perhaps you're going to be in the playoffs. Have you got like a preference then, seeing as we're on that conversation, who you would want to face maybe in that semi-final and final if you get there? Let's assume that Leeds, who are currently in third, are going to be third. Let's just assume that for this question.
There's part of me that, because my day job as a journalist, I believe in stories. You look for the stories, don't you? And I think it's a long story, which is a podcast on its own, but our record against Coventry is horrendous, and our history with Coventry is we don't like each other, basically, for a very strange but also very valid reason. And yet Coventry always seem to beat us. We have won 4 of the last 6, went to Coventry, put in our worst performance of the season, got beat 3-0, and you sort of expected it. The one I'm kind of worried about, and I'm not worried about because I think they're a good team. I don't, to be honest with you. The team we've beaten twice this season is Middlesbrough, really, because we beat them 3-2 in February, I think it was. Wilson Isidore puts the Sunderland shirt on the corner flag, waves it about. We really hammed it up. We enjoyed ourselves, which we very rarely do, because 9 times out of 10 we don't have the opportunity to, because we were relegated twice and end up in League One for this. But we enjoyed it, and I think we're a better team than Middlesbrough. But the story is that he who laughs last loudest and all that kind of thing. So there's part of me that wants to avoid Coventry and Middlesbrough at both stages. I actually can't call who's going to be in the playoffs in 5th and 6th, which is kind of worrying.
Could be both of them.
I know. Like, it's such a strange... Below us, you're just like, well, who wants it, if that makes sense? So it's exciting in that way. I'd probably feel a bit more confident, and again, famous last words, against West Brom. They haven't scored against us this season. I've seen nothing massively that worries me, but there's a story there with Tony Mowbray. There's a story wherever you turn. But I think if I take off my journalist head and my, oh my God, is this going to happen in a negative way to us? I would fancy Sunderland against anyone in the playoffs. Like, I think if we play the way we can play, which is not a guarantee, we're a good team. I don't think anyone will get Sunderland in the playoffs and go, ooh, stadium like that'll be dead easy. Like, our atmosphere could be better this season. I have never said that before up until recently. I've found sometimes the atmosphere is a little bit flat, and maybe that's because we're so in that sort of no man's land, but a good no man's land. So there's nothing to really complain about, but there's nothing to get massively hyped about until it gets to the playoffs, maybe. But I feel like the Stadium of Light, when it's rocking, like we played Sheffield Wednesday in the playoffs in League One a few years ago, and look, Sheffield Sunderland more like a championship playoff than it is League One. So you had a similar kind of atmosphere. It was absolutely bouncing, and one of the best atmospheres I've been to when I was a kid. We played Sheffield United in 1998 in the playoffs, beat them 2-0, 2-1 down from the first leg. Historically, one of the best atmospheres the Stadium of Light has ever seen or ever will see. I think, give me anyone in the playoffs, and I think if we don't win, then we don't win. That's what it is. But I don't fear anyone massively. I fear the story more than I do any team. But if I was to pick a team, let's hope somebody like Norwich has a really weird late run and then like lose their last game and lose loads of confidence, and we end up just hammering Norwich over 2 legs, and then Leeds do a Leeds and just duff it at Wembley. But
yeah,
you can only hope. But do you know what?
8-point gap for Norwich now. 8 points for Norwich to
maybe not Norwich then. It was just a sporadic team. Do you know what worries me most, though, Luke, is, and this is very philosophical with football, is the destination to is the journey to the Premier League better than the destination? You look at Southampton and you're like, oh God, Premier League is boring. What?
I think you're on it, but there though, like we went up 2011, I think.
Was that the Michu season?
That was the second year we were in the Prem.
Michu.
So the first year when we established ourselves, we were favourites to go down by a long way. I think some paper quote is like there was more chance for Elvis to come back from the dead than it was for us to stay in the Premier League. So on our last match at home to Liverpool, Brendan Rodgers got all the fans to dress up as Elvis. Well, we finished we had quite a good first season. It was like 14th or something. I can't look if I got these wrong. Don't crucify me, guys.
No, you were
off top of my head. But yeah, so after that, we actually were quite comfortable for the first 4 or 5 years in the Prem, and then it started going wrong, and we started doing the whole like keeping your head above the water thing. But that I don't know how achievable that is anymore. Is what I was trying to get at. I don't feel like when we went up before, we did it on such a shoestring budget in a good way that it was exciting that you were plucking these talents out for cheap. Scott Sinclair you said about a winger scoring 20 goals earlier. That's the last time we had one. Scott Sinclair cost £1 million. I think it was 500k up front, 500k add-ons. And that was like a massive deal for us, when we went up that year. And these days, that's nothing. Gets you a bench player. And obviously we try and play as passive football as well. So, or we have historically, and that's what we would like to try and do. And we obviously did it well then. It was quite a new thing then. And a couple of managers did it, built on it, worked really well. Brendan Rodgers, the one that got us to the Prem with it. Like Michael Laudrup then, obviously, for me, was the best version of it, the most exciting. That's the Michu season and stuff, the Europa League journey.
Michael Laudrup was a manager at Swansea.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that's like probably going to be the peak memory for me forever, I would imagine. I think you don't ever want to say that to you as a football fan, that you're at whatever age you're at and you've probably seen the peak of your club. But I think in a real world, and again, Swansea fans listening, if anyone disagrees, fair enough. But I think being realistic, you probably have seen the peak of what you're going to see out of Swansea while you're on the earth. Like, that's probably the reality. And I really do think it's hard to break into the Premier League these days and to even give a good account of yourself, let alone stay up. I think
so hard.
It's hard to make yourselves look competitive for a season, let alone actually stay there. Like, it's
especially
really tough.
coming up through the playoffs, I think. I mean, you look at, we beat Southampton 5-0 last season, but like in general, they were one of the better teams. They beat a good Leeds team, in my opinion. And I hear a lot of pundits saying they've been absolutely dreadful and terrible and stuff like that. I think the one plus that if Sunderland were to go up, I do feel like we have players that can grow into better players. We're not like a team where a lot of our players have reached the peak of their power. You have like a Job 19, Chris Rigg 17, Dan Neil, who, to be honest with you, is our best midfielder. People just thankfully really ignore him and look more towards Job and Riggy, which is understandable. But you've got players there, a good nucleus of young players that will hopefully go up and do something more. I spoke to a Sheffield United fan, Ollie, great guy. And to be fair, he made a really valid point. He's like, I think we're better built to get promoted out of the Championship, but worse off than Sunderland would be to survive in the Premier League. And I kind of understood what he meant. He was like, you've got young, fearless players that can get better and you'll probably just have a crack at it and that might work. Yeah. It's like, whereas Sheffield United, like, we know how to be resolute in defence and get the odd goal in the Championship, but then we go up and he's like, and we get beat 8-0 at home off like the team that I don't like very much, that I won't swear on your podcast. But like, I kind of understand it in a way, and it is part of me where I'm really enjoying this journey of like, we might get somewhere, but then I think if we did get promoted, there'd be like the natural kind of biased, silly hope that Joe Bellingham would turn into Jude Bellingham because he's now a Premier League player and things would be fine, and Chris Rigg would have a year under his belt. And look, it's not impossible. I do feel we have three midfielders in Job and especially Chris Rigg. And I honestly think Daniel will one day. I'm such a big fan of Daniel. I all think they have the potential to play for England. I'm not saying on a regular basis every single week. I'm saying I feel like they have the potential to do that. So there's an argument to say that our midfield three could go into the Premier League and be good. But God, there's such a fear that you just think, I don't want to go up and get beat. Look, I mean, I hate saying this, but we played Newcastle in the FA Cup last year. And Newcastle, again, it pains me to say it, because they've had so much money and such investment, are not a bad football team, let's say, in terms of like watching them, although I don't really enjoy watching them. And the golfing class was massive. And it was like players like Joe Linton, not even big. I just watched it and I was like how, and I know they've spent a lot, like 500 million, like I know they've bought stuff. But you think there's a lot of teams in a similar boat that have like made big investments, maybe not as much as that. And you just
the money difference now is crazy just from even being in the league.
Cope? Like, can you cope? Like, and especially the way we do it. Like when our owner's a billionaire, but he's not. I don't think he plans.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because of the way the sustainability rules are set up. That you can spend all you want. You've got to generate that money to show for that.
You look at Forest.
You mentioned Newcastle, and they're even stunted by it. You know, they could have spent so much more.
You look at Forest; they were penalised, and in a way, I sometimes look at Forest and go, "Are they the poster boys where you just take the point deduction because it's going to keep you in the Premier League for a couple of years, and then you might get better?" But then you're kind of hoping that Chris Wood or another Chris Wood has a randomly good season and fires you further up the league. I just think, look, it's a different podcast entirely, but like football's broken. It's knackered.
I agree.
Like, it's totally knackered. So like, I live on a week by week basis, and I hope I have a really lovely day at Wembley, and then I'll crap my pants for playing every other team above us.
I do agree with you. And you're speaking about that team you dislike, and they're currently playing one of the teams we're talking about in Leicester as we're recording this, and it's half hour into the game and they're 2-0 up. So it just says it all, doesn't it? And Leicester, they're just
how far ahead were Leicester last year? Leicester
exactly.
Broken like the points record.
But going back to what you were saying about going up and perhaps having the best chance, I do agree. I think it's quite similar to what I was saying about how we went up. Not that it was completely youth, but players that weren't the names that perhaps got to where they were because of hard work in our case, and the togetherness, and that was more valuable than anything. You know, like Angel Rangel, stuff like that, like plucked out of Spanish. Third tier nowhere for like pennies, not pennies, but pennies in football world. became a solid Premier League player. But like, you've probably got the foundations of players that can grow into that level, whereas the Leicester and Sheffield United, if they go up to Southampton, like Southampton bought a bunch of players in the Championship that were good at that level. You know, like for us, Ryan Manning went there, and for a free, and he's not good enough really for the Premier League. I would even say from when he was at Swansea, you know, and that's the players they're going up with. I know he's not the best player in that team, but good to be at the top of the Championship. Can he grow to be a Premier League player? I don't know. And then if you look at the three there now, Ipswich, they are the team I said at the beginning, actually, I thought they had the best chance of doing the best of the three of them staying up. Kind of for the similar reasons what we've discussed with you guys, but not, again, a little bit different. I just think their approach to it was a bit fresh and unique in the way they came up from League One and excelled. I think they had some good talent in that team that would crack the Premier League a bit differently. And as much as they're not, you know, miles ahead of the likes of Leicester, they're a little bit more doubled Southampton's points, but they're still the one above all, you know, the three of them. They're the one that's doing better. None of them are going to stay up now, are they? But
they took our best player in Jack Clark, who you would have said been our best player since we got promoted. And he looks like a fish out of water, and you just think, God.
It's the sort of thing where Jack Clark, I think, go to a team like Crystal Palace and perhaps you'd look a bit better, but when you're going up, to be fair to Ipswich, a lot of that squad will have back-to-back promotions, and it's, I think, credit to them for being the one of the three that's doing, at the moment, the season's finished yet, the better of the three. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at this time next season, and whoever the three that come up again are the same. And how many years in a row does that happen until like it's a proper issue?
It's whether they care or not. It's whether
all it's going to do is open that conversation back up about getting rid of relegation, if anything. Which, I mean, are you just lucky if you were in that group of teams at the time that's decided?
Fingers crossed we get promoted then.
I think it came up at one point when we were in the Premier League, and I'm sure there was a vote or something, and Swansea said no. Should have said yes.
Have a draft like America. Have a draft like America. And if you're doing really bad,
there was a lot of rumors, which I think they were just made up completely. But we obviously got bought up by American owners, and then people like to say that was beginning of our downfall, and we got relegated, and they haven't been very much liked down these parts. And a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, they clearly thought there was no relegation when they bought us, because because they're not getting their money back basically ever." They're gone now, to be fair. They've been bought out. But that was a bit of a running joke for a long time. But yeah, we've kind of got off on one there, but all good conversation. I want to perhaps bring it back around a little bit to this match. Obviously, just as a disclaimer, we are recording this before Swansea played Plymouth. So I can't talk about the form perhaps going in, but we have just won against Derby. Eases our season a little bit. I think if we win against Plymouth now, it's on Wednesday, by the time we play you guys, we could be a little bit on the beach. I think the 3 points against Plymouth puts us in that category. I'm not saying I want us to be there, but in terms of what are we fighting for now, maybe that's where we are. So it'll be interesting. But like, what can we expect to see from Sunderland? Obviously, we played you earlier in the season. I complimented you heavily on your podcast about especially that second half performance and how good, especially the midfield, was in that game. So what can we expect to see? Will we just be looking for more of the same, or are we going to see a different version of Sunderland going away to the Stadium of Light?
I think we are a different version. I think, look, that second half was Sunderland at their very best. The first half, especially the first half now, was maybe why we're not in the automatics, if that makes sense. Like, you've probably seen a really good version of both. But I think with Sunderland at the moment, look, we've won 4 of the last 6, but before that, it's been a bit stodgy in terms of, like, we'll get a win here or there. But sort of in between those games, we've had a draw against Preston at home. Our worst performance of the season came at Coventry, but that's just a Coventry thing. So I don't know. We read into it a lot at the time, but maybe we shouldn't read that much into it. Coventry just Coventry against Sunderland just happens. But we went through a period of time where we weren't playing very well and weren't really getting the results we were at the start of the season. Look, we got beaten last minute at Leeds, and that was a killer. That sort of killed the automatics, in my personal opinion. Then we got beat at home off Hull. That's our only home defeat this season that we've had, but we were absolutely bloody awful. And in between that, you had draws at home to Plymouth, where we could have quite easily lost the game. They'd just lost 5-0 to Burnley beforehand. So we had this period of time where you were scrambling for answers, and the only thing you could really come up with was the players look knackered. Our squad's not big enough. We don't have parachute payments, and maybe we're just off form. It was hard to decipher. I think it was just our bad period in the season. To say that we've completely flipped that on its head would be a lie. We haven't been like really impressive in the last two games, like Millwall and West Brom. But what we've never looked like is like we've been in danger of not winning the game, even though it's only been 1-0. It's been more of a frustration that we haven't put, look, we're not very good at scoring penalties. I think we broke the championship record by missing 4 in a row this season. We've missed 4 or 5 penalties this season, 2 of them in one game. So if you get a penalty, don't worry. Oh, sorry, if we get a penalty, don't worry, we'll miss it. But if we scored that penalty, we'll win the game against Millwall 2-0. It's comfortable, and I think that would have been a fair result. Saturday, I think 1-0 was probably a fair result, but you can't say there was an opportunity not to put more in. I never felt like in both games we were going to drop it, which is a good thing. I think I wouldn't call them like poor performances, because they're not, but like they're not what we were at the start of the season when we were like really on it. But
so
we've got players
running out of legs a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just a long old season, and I think if you look at our bench compared to like Sheffield United, Leeds, and Burnley, it's just not as strong. We've got like a young 18-year-old Serbian kid who could be great, but he doesn't have a great deal of experience. I don't think he speaks a great deal of English. We've had a lot of injuries as well, which people seem not to have noticed. Like we had Dan Ballard's been out numerous times this season. Dennis Serkin's out for a couple more weeks, if potentially at the end of the season, maybe playoffs. Enzo Lefebvre, which is like a player that shouldn't be playing at this level because he's a phenomenal footballer. He plays for Roma. I think if Roma were a little bit more settled and didn't have 3 managers in one season, there's probably never a chance of us getting him. If he didn't grow up with Regis Lebris, it's definitely not happening. He's definitely not coming to Sunderland. He's been out for about 4 weeks. He's just back. We've just got Romain Rundle back after like 3 months out, and he's done his hamstring, and he's probably done for the season again. So, look, there's been suspensions to Joe Bellingham. He had a 3-game suspension at one point. And our squad is just not as strong as the 3 teams above us. But the problem is when you're fighting to be in those top 2 positions, you compare yourself to those 3. The good thing is, I think we talked about, I think when the fan base in general, there's a couple on my podcast still think automatics are achievable. But if something got automatics, I'll do every single podcast in the Premier League. If we get promoted naked, I'm not confident we won't get automatics. But which would be disappointing for everyone, really. But I feel like we're getting back to. We talked about momentum. We said if you get in the playoffs, like the one time Sunderland have won the playoffs was at League One, and I think we were unbeaten in the last sort of 14, 15 games or something to that extent. And you just felt that even though the performances weren't great, you were like, we know how to win a game of football. So when it came to the big game against Sheffield, we won 1-0. At home, we drew 1-1 away from home, scored in the 93rd minute. By the time you got to Wembley with Wickham, you were like, yeah. Like, we know how to win this game. We're the better team. But a lot of those results in that period, and it's a different squad to an extent. It's not completely different, but it's different to an extent. A lot of those results leading up to that playoff run was 1-0 wins in the last minute against Gillingham, like 3-2 wins against Shrewsbury in the last minute, like crappy wins where the performance wasn't great. 2 goals in the last 5 minutes against Crewe. But what it built was a confidence and a steely determination that we could win games leading up to a playoff. And I feel like if we continue to do this, and obviously we're speaking before the game against Norwich, if we continue to have games towards the end of the season where it's like 1-0, 1-0, 2-1, 0-0, 1-1, 2-0, that kind of result, stodgy, straightforward wins where we deserve to win the game and we pick up an occasional draw, by the time we hit those playoffs, there's nothing to say we can't win those playoffs, because on our day, I honestly feel we're every bit as good as any team in this league, especially our starting 11. So I feel like what you're going to see on Saturday will probably not be as good a diversion as you see in that second half. That was a real good Sunderland performance. That was Sunderland at its best this season. But I think you'll see a team that has been buoyed a little bit by confidence of like 4 wins from 6. And will want to win a game at home at the Stadium Light, put together a bit of a run at the Stadium Light, and will not play like they have nothing to play for, even though 4th place is virtually sealed, if we're completely honest.
Yeah. Same with the automatics. It's not that I don't believe you could go and win all of the rest of your games. I just don't know if that even gets you there now. Like you're relying on Burnley and Sheffield United and Leeds to drop enough points that was it 6 games left?
6 or 7. You see,
7?
I trust Leeds to shit the bed. I don't really trust Burnley and Sheffield United.
Well, what's that? Say 6 games. So you've got. I'm gonna check actually.
It's hard.
Maths. Yeah, it's like
it's a real difficult ask.
18 points, yeah. And you're what, 8 points off. So you need them to lose to drop 10, essentially. So
it's not happening.
And that's not being negative. Like you're 15 points clear of Middlesbrough, so you'll essentially just need to win a game. And to be fair, I don't think you even need to win a game, but mathematically, you need to win a game. Sunderland, go bet on it now. Sunderland to finish in 4th, probably get like nothing back. But,
never bet on us. Trust me, from my own personal experience.
But yeah, no, it's a great season, of course. But I think probably a sensible approach, isn't it, to try and build some sort of momentum to go into the playoffs with a bit of confidence. And
sure.
I was going to actually comment on the recent form of yourselves. It looks very solid, not spectacular in regards to like a lot of winning by 1 goal margins, doing the job, maybe being harder to beat sort of thing. Because even in that spell you were saying was a bit disappointed for you, like still didn't lose in like 6 games. So as much as you were saying some of them could have been wins, still draw, win, which I guess is why you're 4th. You know, it might also be the reason why you're not in the automatic hunt, but it's also the reason you're ahead of the playoff battle. I know that sounds weird because you're in the playoffs, but you're not in the playoff battle. You're kind of secure.
We're in a strange situation. I don't think there's many teams that have been 15 points clear and 4th, but too far off the.
No, it's a bit of a weird gulf. We don't see that very often. Quite often there's a bit of like top 3 maybe sometimes pulls away, and then the rest of the playoffs is a bit tight. Yeah, you're kind of in the middle of both of those things.
It's bizarre, but I'll take it. It's not
yeah. It's like the Premier League this year we were talking about earlier. I know I should have said this earlier, but the gulf at the moment is, I think it's quite a poor league actually overall, the Premier League this year.
Awful.
But then there's still a gulf to the bottom 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which I find insane. Like if you look at Liverpool winning the league, and not to discredit them, but the last few seasons, the points totals of the winners and even the second place chasing team have been significantly higher. This season it's like quite a bit down. And if you look at the rest of the league, that's all quite compressed. And then you've got 3 teams. You think that's like the Championship, just in the Premier League, 3 teams. But weird gulfs all over the place. Anyway, back on track. Who do you think Swansea should be looking out for in this game the most in terms of who might be the match winner for Sunderland? Or it might not be the person that scores the goal, but who's going to be that person that perhaps puts the performance in to win the game?
It might well be. Bizarrely, it's our right back who's playing at left back, Trey Hume. Look, he's up there for a player of the season candidate for me, but he's hit his best part of form this season. I think he's got 9 goal contributions from fullback. He's just a really good player. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of chat around Job and Chris Rigg. Like, it really scares me that players like Dan Neil and Trey Hume are getting watched as well. Trey scored the winner in the last 2 games from left back. He's a right back, but our left back, Dennis Serkin's injured, Adji Alessi's injured, and Leo Yelda, who's like our 3rd choice left back, was injured recently, so he had to kind of fit in at left back. He scored twice. He's put in some assists recently. I think he's got something like 6 in however many games assists this season. He is one of our biggest goal contributors, and he plays at fullback. He is known for tough tackling, but my God, is he good at setting goals up and getting in the goals. And I think, whilst I think Dan Neil's our best player, especially on his day, I think at the moment, if I told you anyone but Trey Hume, then I'd be lying. Like, he's been fantastic. He's been great, and I absolutely love him. So I'm going to go with Trey. He's the goal scoring right back / left back that you have to be aware of from free kicks, corners, and all sorts, apparently.
And I know it's a difficult question on the spot, so if you aren't going to answer, that's fine. But is anyone from Swansea team that worries you at all?
I've always been, like, I mentioned Matt Grimes before, and he went. I was really surprised by that.
Everyone used to say him. Now people have got to actually watch us again.
I just didn't quite get it. But I didn't quite get it, because I felt he was such an important part of, what you were as a team in terms of He was someone who kept the ball like religiously. He was someone who maybe wouldn't have been that flashy, but he to me was Swansea's sort of Dan Neil, maybe someone that most people don't notice, but he's quite clearly very key to how you play and very much someone that you'd notice when he wasn't there. But one player, weirdly, that I have kept an eye on, it's because we were linked to him in League One. And I know he's only got, I think, 3-ish, 4-ish assists this season and hasn't done too much. But I've also thought Josh Keys looked decent when I've watched you on the telly. I think getting forward is obviously what he's good at. I think modern day fullback, as I touched on before about Trey Hume, sometimes it's the things they do going forward and offensively that are the most important thing. But I sat and watched the game against Leeds, which I know was a couple of months ago now, which I wish he'd really hung on for because that would have really helped. I'm kind of still annoyed at you about that, but it is what it is. But Josh Key, we linked to him, I think it was 1 million from Exeter when we were in League One. And like I didn't know who he was, but the name always stuck with me. And when I seen him went to yourselves, I've seen him play. Looks like quite a tall, gangly lad that's got an ability to get past a player. He kind of does that thing where he's quite good at drifting in the middle of midfield as well, which is kind of a modern day thing, I think.
Yeah. Luke Williams likened him to Gareth Bale for doing that. So take from that what you will. But that's what he said.
I would say he's not quite as good, but I understand the concept.
Yeah.
I think he looks pretty decent, and I think I touched on it before with the previous show and the preview show. I don't know if this is a popular opinion or not, but when we were in League One, I always thought Harry Darling was pretty decent. He always looked like a bit of a step above the League One level, and I think he's fitting in to a Championship defence and maybe not one of the most outstanding players in that division, but like he certainly is proven that he's, in my assumption, that he was higher level than League One, that he certainly is.
No, I agree. I think Josh Key is, you're right, getting forward is what he's good at. He's always the best. He's not a bad defender, don't get me wrong, but you're right in saying modern day attacking fullback. That's what he is, yeah. However, he does maybe it's the way that we were playing under Luke Williams, but running into trouble, does make a few mistakes. But he's got a lot of potential. I think it's one of those where on his day it can click and he's really good. Sometimes then he gets a bit overconfident and makes the wrong decision. But there's been a few too many of them this season, over the course of the season, to you needed to get better. It's fine because he's still young and you think he's developing, but he needs to work on that sort of aspect. But he is definitely a highlight for us at the moment and someone that's up and coming. And Harry Darling, unfortunately, his contract's out in the summer and not sure where that stands at the moment. So that's a little bit concerning because I do think you're right in what you're saying, but I do think on his day he is one of the best centre-backs in the league. I'm not 100% sure how much this contract situation is a burden.
I think it has to be.
Yeah, I think first half of the season, I think he was really good. And then there was some talk about him re-signing in January, which was the same time as the whole Luke Williams stuff I was talking to you about on your podcast. And by all accounts, when it came out that he was linked and then didn't leave, Darling essentially pulled away from signing the deal. Don't know if it's because of the uncertainty or whatever. Don't know the ins and outs of it. It was a long going process. Cabango signed the deal, and then a week later it was oh, Darling's ready to sign, but it never happened. And all of that came out. So no one really knows, I guess, the details unless you're involved in that. But it's a shame if we do end up losing him on a free, because as much as you never want to lose a player anyway, I do think we could have got a decent fee for him had he been snapped up for a fee. I'd obviously rather keep him, and it's going to be a bit of a problem to replace now, but that's the situation with him anyway. But yeah, definitely one that stands out, and he can actually score goals from corners as well. So if we can find him. What do you think going into this one then? What's your prediction? I know you kind of already told me on the other video, but I can ask you again anyway.
Well, you're the only team with a 100% record at the Stadium of Light since we've come back to the Championship, but Cardiff were the same. So, of course...
Don't say that word here.
I apologise.
They're currently where they belong.
The blue team from Wales, they had a 100% record, but we beat them 2-1. And it was probably their best performance of the three because they absolutely shithoused 2 wins previously against us.
I mean, that's them all over, really, though, isn't it?
It was just a really crap 1-0 win for them both times. Really frustrating, annoying trip back to Glasgow. But I feel like Swansea have been worthy of their wins the last 2 years when they've came up. I think you went 2-0 up against us pretty early on last year, and then we got one.
Wasn't it Ronald decided he was prime Ronaldo for a day, and then
right.
And then
he
hasn't done anything since. So
he's gone back to Ronald as opposed to Ronaldo.
He ends up with a no in his shirt this week.
I fancy us to win. Like, I think we're a better team. And look, that's on a recorded podcast. You can tape it up and stuff like that. The championship.
I think that's quite. I mean, the league table doesn't lie, does it?
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're telling me, like, am I going into a game against Swansea and being nervous? If I am, then I should probably be quite nervous about what's coming in the playoffs. I think we have enough to beat Swansea, but Swansea at the same time, I've said that 2 times now, came up and beaten us. I know one time we had 10 men X, Y, and Z, but it is what it is. But I fancy us to nick it. I think, 2-1. I think we're building a bit of momentum just now. I think it'll be probably not a perfect performance. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to say 1-0. I think 1-0 the last 2 games. It's probably been about a 1-0 in both.
Yeah.
I don't think you're a team that's going to be able to be blown away. I don't think that. I think you'll be quite sturdy. I think, as you touched on before when we were chatting sort of off air, Sheehan's obviously tidied you up a little bit at the back and trying to make you more hard to beat, because that's kind of what you need. You just need to get enough points to make sure that you're not going to get relegated. And if you don't concede, there's always a chance of winning. And then, you never know, you might end up randomly ending up in the playoffs. Stranger things have happened. So I think he's probably doing it the right way, but I fancy us to win 1-0.
Yeah, I agree, but I think my prediction was 2-1, wasn't it? So I'll stick with 2-1.
Yeah.
I basically agree with everything that you said. I don't expect us to go and win. Didn't expect anything from Leeds, though. We came away with a point, but that's kind of linked to what you just said about what Sheehan's done. We got a point at the end of that game. It was a late goal, and as much as he was, perhaps keeper should have saved it. Keeper obviously didn't do well for a first goal either. You still got to take the chances, haven't you? And I know. But you did save a penalty, so did something good. But I mean, we were in the game is the point. So you never know when you're in the game.
Well, of course.
I don't expect us to get a result, so I'm going to say 2-1. But if we come with the draw, like it's in line with the performances that we've been capable of showing lately, which would be nice. A bonus point. It's one of those games that if you get anything, this is a bonus for me, the way that we are at the moment. So well, thanks for coming on again, as always. If you can remind everyone when they can find the opposite version of this video if they would like to.
So pretty much anywhere on any of your podcast stations. What was it? Spotify, YouTube, Podbean, Google Podcasts. I don't know if we're on Amazon. We're in places, but if you want to have a bit of conflab, we're on Twitter at What the Falk Pod. I try to stay off that thing these days, but I keep getting roped back in because you know what I love? Football.
Yeah, it's just the biggest audience, regardless. Like, I know a lot of left since, but someone needs to step up and make something different, I guess.
It needs to change. Blue Sky didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but here we are.
No. But yeah, so thanks as always. I'll have all the links in the video anyway, and good luck for rest of the season after the weekend. On your playoff journey, because as much as it's not 100% confirmed, did it? Well, you are actually confirmed playoffs, aren't you? Are you?
I don't think officially, but I think we might be.
I think you will be this weekend, probably.
Yeah.
Unless everyone else wins and you don't. I can't see that happening. So, yeah, pretty much confirmed playoffs. So, good luck. I'm sure we'll all be watching on the telly, and we'll see if we speak to you again next season or not. So, I mean, if we do, you probably didn't have the best of time in the playoffs. So, yeah.
Yeah, probably, mate. But here we are.
But there we go. At least you won't have to play Newcastle. So that's the silver lining.
I won't swear.
Okay, well, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Have a good one.
Thanks, mate.